Welcome and thank you for joining us today. My name is Jody Zarambi. Some of you might know me by my pen name, Jazzy Mitchell. I am the moderator for today's question and answer session, sponsored by Launch Point Press and Desert Palm Press. Now I'm excited today to spend time with two wonderful authors, E.J. Kindred and Gail Newman. And we see E.J. here now. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Both will read an excerpt from one of their projects, and after the readings, we will spend some time getting to know them better. If you're watching this live, feel free to submit questions and comments on the page where you are watching us. So, EJ, before you begin your reading, please tell us what the story is about and set up the scene.
So I'm reading from my new book, Family Secrets, which I'm hoping will be published later on this summer. It's the sequel to my first book, In Harm's Way, right here. The setup is this. In the first book, my protagonist, who is Annie Velasquez, has become the person of interest in a murder. And that storyline carried over from In Harm's Way into Family Secrets. So in the part that I'm going to read, Annie has been out running errands, and she runs into someone who looks exactly like the woman she was accused of murdering. Happens to be her girlfriend, who was found to be responsible for a fire that killed Annie's dad. And so the police think that Annie has a pretty strong motive to kill Nikki as revenge for the death of Annie's father. So in the excerpt that I'm going to read, Annie has had this encounter, which happens at the very beginning of Family Secrets. She's gone home and she's told her family what has happened. And she's still kind of really questioning herself. But one of her friends is a man named Patrick, who's also her lawyer. And he calls the homicide detectives and sets up a meeting for them to go in and talk to them about this. And that is what I'm going to read here. Where I'm going to start is actually when Patrick is calling the detective to set up the meeting, and then the meeting itself. And again, Jody, if I run a little long, you're going to have to yell at me because I was not smart enough to time this. So Patrick calls, and the detective's name is Beth O'Brien. And he says, "Beth, Patrick Wyatt here." He'd shifted into lawyer mode, which made me smile a little. He could be a goofball of the first order, so hearing him sound so professional was as amusing as it was reassuring. "Annie and I need to meet with you as soon as you have time. She might have new information on the case." He listened for a few seconds. "Is he up to speed yet?" More waiting. She turned to me with his phone to his ear, and he said, "Tomorrow at 10? When I nodded, he said to Beth, "That works. See you then." He ended the call. "Is who up to speed yet?" "Beth has a new partner, someone who just joined from another department," he said. He said he's an experienced investigator. She's showing him the ropes here in Portland, and he'll be there when we meet with her. "I hope the new guy doesn't throw a monkey wrench into the works." He nodded. "I know what you mean. We have a solid working relationship with Beth, and I wouldn't want it disrupted." "You don't suppose hallucinations are enough to get me off a murder charge, do you?" "Not funny," Patrick retorted. "You know what's really not funny?" He raised an eyebrow and waited. "I'm going to meet the detective's new partner tomorrow morning, and his first impression of me is I'm seeing dead people. I think that could put me fairly low on the credibility scale, especially if he's some kind of macho hardliner. He could be a good guy, willing to listen. Beth wouldn't partner with someone who wasn't professional to the core, if she has a choice. I lean back in my chair. It'll be interesting to see what they think. I mean, if Nikki is alive, I can finally be free of the police. It'd be nice to have my light back. And then they go to the police department. I paused before the glass door and read the black and gold embossing. Portland Police Bureau Detective Division. I glanced at Patrick. Into the belly of the beast? I tried to make a joke, but since I could barely breathe, it fell flat. It'll be fine, he said, briefly stroking my shoulder. He won't think you're crazy. She won't think you're crazy. I don't know why not. I said, I do. We pushed through the doors into the reception area. Patrick spoke to the young woman behind the desk who directed us to chairs along the wall to wait. I tried to sit still, but only when Patrick put his hand on my knee did I realize how much I was fidgeting. In what felt like an hour but was less than 5 minutes, Beth O'Brien emerged from the depths, accompanied by her new partner. Any other time, my attention would have focused on Beth. Her heart-shaped face, deep brown eyes, and blonde hair made my pulse quicken no matter how many times I saw her. This time, however, the man who accompanied her drew my eye. He was about 6 feet tall with a severe crew cut and the broadest shoulders I'd ever seen. Maybe he thought his expression showed he was a serious professional, but from my perspective, he just looked forbidding. My nervousness ramped up to 11 on a scale of 10. Hi, Annie, Beth said with a smile. Patrick, how have you been? This is Ted Winston. He's new to the Portland Bureau, and he's joining our team. We shook hands before she led us to her office, where we settled into the two chairs positioned for guests in front of her desk. Winston settled into a chair at the end of the desk and, leaning back, propped one ankle onto the opposite knee. Before we get started, Beth said, I want you to know that while Ted has many years of experience investigating homicides, I'm still the lead on your case. She looked directly at me. Do you have any questions? She waited till I murmured in the negative. Okay then, what did you want to talk to me about? Patrick, when you called, you said there might be new information. As far as I know, there's nothing new to report. I paused long enough to take a deep breath and let it out. That, I said slowly, might not be entirely true. Oh, looking intrigued, she took a pad of yellow paper and a pen from the desk drawer, ready to take notes. Winston pulled a notepad and pen from his jacket pocket. I'd given a lot of thought to how to tell my story, whether to lead up to with the surprising or was it shocking detail or build up to it. In the moment, and putting aside my concern about making an unfavorable first impression with the new detective, I decided on the latter. As you know, my brother Joe and I have decided to reopen my dad's shop. She nodded, encouraging me to continue, pen poised but willing to be patient. As part of that work, we agreed to pick up supplies for the builder and do some other work at the construction site. Yesterday morning, I went up to North Portland to one of the building supply places. I gave her the name of the company, which both detectives jotted down. After I was done there, I stopped for coffee at a place they recommended, Jolene's Java Joint. Oh, I've been there, she said. Excellent coffee. She added its name to her notes. I looked down at my hands, which were clenched tightly together. I deliberately relaxed them, trying to breathe and hoping for the best. I glanced at Patrick, and he gave me a reassuring nod. Beth didn't speak, letting me take my time. Winston was also still. Okay, I finally said, I don't know what you're going to think about this. Hell, I don't know what to think of it myself. I paused again, not so much for effect, but to steel myself against their reactions. I saw Nikki Fleming at the coffee shop. She's alive. If I'd never fully understood the phrase, so quiet you could hear a pin drop, now I did. Beth didn't move, didn't speak, didn't blink, and I wasn't sure she was even breathing until she said, Tell me more.
Awesome. And in case you didn't hear at the beginning, for those watching, that is E.J. Kindred reading from her second book of the Anna Velasquez mystery series called Family Secrets. And that really gives us a good setup for what that book is going to be like. Since E.J. is a Launch Point Press author and I'm our publisher, I can say that we are planning to publish it by the end of the summer. So it won't be that long, and I know you're going to love it. Thank you, EJ. And Gail, look at you. Here you are. So glad to have you with us. So Gail Newman, welcome for being here. And you are one of the Desert Palm Press authors.
Yes,
and we have you. You just had a book that was released. Why don't you tell us about that book, set up the story, and set up the scene for us so we can listen to you read it for us.
I'm going to read the first chapter of the new book. It's called The Summer of Collins. And this one it's about a writer who has decided to escape her normal summer lifestyle. She's gone through a breakup and head towards the mountains, and what happens and how her life changes and takes on new meanings when she takes this summer vacation. So and how she meets this little boy and how she connects with him, his family, and how basically what it is about him that she finds fulfilling for her, but what it is for him that he finds about her, and subsequently how she finds a family. So that's the Summer of Collins.
Without further ado, why don't we have you read a scene from that book for us?
Okay. The car made its way up the long driveway. Blair looked out the window as they passed the green lawns and the flowering trees. It was the 1st of June, and spring still held its grip before summer came and had her turn. "It's the best thing I can do for myself," she whispered as the car slowed to a stop. Opening the door, she stepped out and inhaled the fragrant air. "Can I carry your bags in?" the driver asked. "Yes, please," she answered as she gathered some of the smaller bags from the back seat. Moving away from the car, she finally had a clear view of what she had been waiting to see. There before her stood the large white clapboard manor house. Its large windows that faced the grounds and the lake were flanked by black shutters. Separate little matching cottages were set off to one side. She had seen it in an ad while flipping through a magazine in the dentist's office a few years ago. Something about it had struck her so that she deftly removed the page, placed it in her bag, only to be found a few months back as she packed for a trip. It was everything she had hoped for. She followed the driver up the wide wooden planks and stopped for a moment to admire the front porch lined with Adirondack chairs and large pots filled with blooming flowers. "I can see myself sitting in those." Smiling at the thought, she considered over the reception area where the driver was placing her bags. "Hope you have a good summer," he said as he turned and walked away. "Welcome to Scott's Resort. Checking in?" The young man behind the desk greeted her warmly. Blair guessed him to be in his early 20s. "Yes, thank you. The name is Blair Jackson." "Why, yes, Miss Jackson. I see we have you booked to spend the season with us." "That's correct. We have you in a corner suite overlooking the lake. It's number 402. I'll have someone bring your bags to your room in a few minutes. Here's your key, and if you just make a left at that column, the elevators will be on your right and take you to your floor. If you need anything, my name is Dave, and I'll be happy to help you. We hope you enjoy your stay." "Thank you so much, Dave. I'll just take my briefcase." Blair picked up the bag and walked towards the elevators. As she followed Dave's directions, she couldn't help but notice the view of the lake out the windows. She placed the bag next to the column and went to look out. It was a beautiful day, and the sun glistened off the water. Tearing herself away from the view, she turned toward the elevator. She took one step before she felt something wrapped tightly around her waist. What the? Looking down, she was surprised to see tiny arms that her hands grasped. She stood for a moment before moving slightly to each side. Finally, she moved just enough to make out a small head pressed up against her back. "Ooh, how cute," cooed a woman going by. "Okay, what's going on here?" Slowly, she reached down and gently unclasped the tiny hands. Freeing herself, she held one hand as she turned. There before her stood a little blonde-haired boy. Hello, Blair smiled at him. It had been a long time since she had a small child hug her. She quickly thought back to when her nieces and nephews were little. How now that they were teenagers, she didn't get to see them quite as often. The boy didn't say a word. She looked around. No one seemed to be paying any attention to him. He must belong to someone around here. She knelt down in front of him. So what's your name? With that, he raced around the column and in the direction of the front desk. I'm so good with kids, she laughed to herself. Standing, she walked over and picked up the bag before pushing the button to the elevator. As she waited, she wondered where the little boy went and who he was with. Taking a few steps back to peek around the corner, she saw no sign of him. She went back to the elevator, pushed the button again, and waited for the doors to open. I wonder what that was all about, she thought as the doors closed in front of her. 2 hours later, after unpacking and changing her clothes, her cell phone rang. How is it, Julia asked. Blair sat at the window seat, putting on her sneakers. It's perfect. It's just what I needed. I still don't understand why you would trade a beautiful summer at the beach for the mountains. I mean, not that the mountains aren't beautiful, but they're for the fall and the winter. I wanted something different, a different view, different people. Well, I'm sure there'll be different people. Blair took the phone away from her ear and stared at it for a moment. Putting it back in position, she questioned, what is that supposed to mean? From the looks of it, you've gone to the family resort with kids. What's wrong with that? I like kids better than some of the adults I've met recently, Blair finished tying her shoelaces. What about the things you might need while you're there? Is there a spa? Where will you get a massage? Julia, I haven't gone to the ends of the earth. They have things like that here. At least I think they do in town. The only thing I probably should have done before I left was get a haircut. Other than that, I'm good. You know me, in my time off, I like to go with no makeup and put my hair in a ponytail and just relax. I spend enough time being made up for all the appearances you send me on. You would look perfect on those without your hair and makeup being done. Not everyone is blessed with natural blonde hair or fresh face look. And people would give anything to have your curly red hair. People only say they want curly hair because they don't have to deal with it. Come on, Julia. You know you're a knockout. Because I work at it. That's because you have all those meetings and events you have to attend. You have to look good at a moment's notice. I don't have to, and I promise the summer in the mountains won't change me. Good. Now, I'm not going to start pestering you right away, but you know why you're there, right? Despite your reasoning. Yes, Julia, I know, to finish the book. As long as we're clear on that, I need to be able to tell Adam something, and I don't want to have him ask me first. That's why you're the best literary agent a girl could ask for. And that's why we still have Adam as your publisher. He's been very patient with you, you know, having gone through just a similar experience. I admit the breakup didn't come at the best time, but we have to remember that it was the best thing. I know, but still, if I run into her anywhere, I'm going to kick her ass. Blair leaned back and admired the vast greenery that was laid out beyond the window pane. It's too pretty here to ever think about that. You really need to come here and just visit. As soon as you tell me you have something for me to read, I'll be in the car. My laptop is staring at me right now, she said, glancing in the direction of the laptop now sitting on a desk. Good, go give it a whirl. I'll talk to you soon. Call me if anything happens, like typing begins. Love you too, Julia, Blair said, hanging up. Time to go exploring. She grabbed the room keys. She made her way down the main lobby and out the doors. Wandering past the tennis courts, shuffleboard, and pool, she found herself on a path alongside a creek. She sat down to listen to it as it rushed along over the rocks. Leaning over, she ran her fingers back and forth in the cool water. This is exactly what I need. No distractions, no interruptions, just relax and finish the damn book. As she walked up the hill towards the main house, she saw him, the little blonde-haired boy, watching her out the window. Looking around, she saw there was no one else near her. She kept her eyes on him as she got close to the door. As soon as she opened it, he ran off towards the reception desk. She followed, but when she got there, he was gone. Why is this little boy watching me? Who does he think I am? She walked towards the desk. Dave, can I ask you something? Of course, how can I help you? Twice now, I've seen a little boy. Blonde hair about this big. He held up his hand to show the height. Yes, have you seen him? He's back here in the office. His name is Collins, and he keeps getting away from us. Gets away from you? Sounds a little captive-like, she laughed. His grandparents own the resort. We've been trying to keep him occupied, but with so many check-ins today, it's been a little hard. With that, the door opened, and the little boy bolted out. He stopped in front of Blair. Collins, now you come back here, came a voice from behind the door. We meet again, Blair said to the little boy. Now, honey, you can't keep making Nanny chase after you. A pleasant older-looking woman came and stood behind him. She looked at Blair. I'm sorry, is he bothering you? Not at all. It seems we keep running into each other, so I was just about to introduce myself. Blair put her hand out. I'm Blair Jackson. What's your name? The little boy looked at her. Now, honey, go tell the nice lady your name. The woman placed her hands on his shoulders. I'm Collins Scott. Go ahead now, shake her hand. He's 4, and I'm trying to teach him proper manners. He looked up at the woman, then extended the small hand to Blair. It's very nice to meet you, Collins. Blair smiled at him. I'm his grandmother, Carolyn Scott. Nice to meet you, Mrs. Scott. Please, dear, call me Carolyn. Everyone does, she said with a warm smile. Thank you, Carolyn. Have you been here before? No, this is my first time. I just checked in today. I thought as much. We pretty much know everyone that stayed here. My husband and I have owned this place for 40 years. We were supposed to be retired, but, well, things happen. She patted the boy's shoulders. Come on now, Collins. Let's let Miss Jackson get on with her day. Please call me Blair. Jack, Collins said. I hope to see you again soon, Collins. Blair stooped down to him. Jack, he repeated. Okay then, Blair said with a tilt of her head. Now, let us know if you need anything. Come on now, Carolyn said. She turned and walked Collins back into the office. Blair felt her heart warm as she watched them go. And that's the first chapter of The Summer of Collins.
Great, thank you. A nice introduction to Collins, and I have so many questions about him and how that's going to develop with Blair. I also like the fact that Blair is trying to finish her book.
Yes, we all know that feeling.
We sure do. We sure do. And in case anyone didn't catch it, that's Gail Newman, who is a Desert Palm Press writer, and her book, The Summer of Collins, was just released May 15th. So please go and get a copy of that. So now we've heard a bit from both of you. I have all these wonderful questions for you so that we can get to know you both better.
Oh, no.
It'll be great. I'm going to take care of you both. So Gail, congratulations, first of all, for the release of your third novel.
Thank you.
And I'd like you to tell us about the types of books you write about. There are certain genres that you are attracted to writing, and how do you prepare for each book?
I love to write romance novels. Growing up as a kid, my mother and I would stay up late and watch old movies, the Late Late Show up in New York and all that. And I would always create these movies in my head. And so that's basically how I come up with my ideas. I get a thought, and my mother would put me to bed tonight after watching these movies, and she'd say, now go to sleep. And I'm like, no, I have to think. She's like, you have to think? I'm like, I have to think. So I would get an idea in my head and play it out in my head. And in fact, in the morning, I would get up and write myself little notes to know where I left off so that I could pick it up when I got back in bed at night and keep going. And so, I love love. So
I'm a fan also. Yes. So it sounds to me like you create the stories in your head first before you even start writing.
Yes. And it always seems to me that the idea will come. I know how I want the story to end. I know how it starts. Mm-hmm. I just have to get it there. So it's, And sometimes I surprise myself with what some things happen. In my first book, The Sunlight and the Shadows, my characters didn't end up with who I thought they were going to end up with until I thought it'd be the best way for them to end up. So sometimes I throw my own little quirk in there.
And we'll get back to that later on because I have another question about that. But before we move on to putting EJ in the hot seat, tell me first, Gail, how much of your own experiences do you incorporate into your writing?
Sunlight in the Shadows is really the only one that's based on any of my experiences. It's set on Shelter Island, where my wife and I have a home. And the home that we have actually belonged to her aunt and her grandmother, and we bought the rest of the family out to get it. And Sunlight in the Shadows is about a painting, and her aunt was an artist. My wife is also an artist. So I kind of just drive from that because I live there part of the time. And so it's kind of her family history into that book with a lot more.
Oh, excellent. So, oh, God bless you, EJ. So, Gail, so you draw on places that you know then and bring that into the books.
And some of them, yeah. And in my other one, Flight to Paradise, I mean, that one's kind of set in Manhattan. That one just came out of just an idea. And that's how I built that one.
Excellent.
Just like the Summer of Collins. Although I did Summer in the Poconos, so that kind of played in there.
Yes. And I can hear you're from New York. I can hear that.
I am, but I've been living in Virginia for 25 years. But see what happens when I go to New York, and I always tell everybody here, no, you have the accent, not me.
Right. Of course, but it comes out, I'm from Boston. It comes out too, no matter what I do.
Yeah, and it's a lot worse when I come back from there. So yes.
Oh, I'm sure that's true. So EJ, I happen to know that you're in the middle of your second book, the one that you just read from, and that we're going to have it published by the end of the summer if everything goes as planned. I'm very excited about it. So tell us more about this sequel. Since it's part of a series, what's your process for deciding where you go with these characters, and how much do you rely on your readers' knowledge of the previous book from the series? And I have a follow-up, but let's start with that.
Okay. So in Harm's Way, most of the plot lines concluded except for Nikki and Annie's relationship with Beth O'Brien, because she's got a serious thing for Beth, and she's like, wait, she could arrest me. I can't have a relationship with her.
Right.
So
but she's
everything
a
else,
detective, right? So
yes, yeah, right. And her friends tease her unmercifully about it because, of course, they know. So there's a little bit of carryover from the first book to the second. I try to fill in enough of the background so that if somebody just picked up Family Secrets at the end of this summer and they had not read In Harm's Way, they wouldn't be lost. But there's a lot of background in Harm's Way of her family, how her dad died, and that kind of thing. That, I mean, of course, I would love for everybody to read the series from the beginning, but I don't think it's totally necessary.
Right. I can understand that. But of course, once they read the second book in the series, they'll want to go back to the first book if they haven't read it yet, because now you have enough in the second book to, make them curious about, well, what is the background? What happened with her father? What happened with Nikki beforehand? So I can see where that would certainly play into it. And so let me ask then, what extent do you recap or refer to past events in this book?
Not a lot. I try like crazy to avoid information dumps because it's something I'm notoriously known for. But there's enough there, just, passing memory, passing mention of the fire in the bike shop, which is where Annie's dad died. And, yes, it's been 1.5 years and everybody's thought Nikki was dead. And she's been, the focus of the police since in that time. So I hope that if I've done a good job, I hope I've filtered it in a way that readers can pick it up, but that it's not like, 4 paragraphs of a recap at the beginning of the book, which would be terrible.
Right. Yeah. You don't want to do what we call an information dump, where you're just putting everything from the last book in there.
Exactly.
There you go. Now we can move on to the main event. Yeah. We want to try and avoid that.
So like I say, I mean, you've read it. If I've done a decent job of it, that's how I try to do it. And now that I'm starting to write the third book, I'm trying to do the same thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So let me do this next question to both of you. Does being a writer require an overactive brain or an overactive imagination, whatever that means to you? Who wants to take that first? Gail?
I will. I don't know if I would say overactive, but very active for sure, because You have to have a good imagination. You just, in order to write something that you would hope people would appreciate.
Right.
You know.
So
Maybe the overactive part is why I've got insomnia, but that's an entirely different problem.
well, it sounds like Gail has that too, though, because you're thinking about it while you're sleeping. So
It's true. I wake up in the middle of the night, and it's so funny because I'll say, "Oh my God, that's so good." Remember that in the morning, and then of course in the morning I'm like, "Well,
it's
it was
gone.
really good at 2:00 in the morning, but I don't know what's going to happen now."
Right. And isn't that, I've heard so many writers, and I've also experienced that, where you make that mistake saying, I'll remember it in the morning, especially if it's important or it's crucial, and then you lose it entirely. So now I usually have a pen and paper in the dark, which has its own problems, because you're writing in the dark in the middle of the night, and then whether or not you can actually read it in the morning is another thing.
Yeah, my shorthand was bad enough in high school, so what I'm writing in the middle of the night makes no sense at all now.
That's right. So let me talk to both of you about the process of taking a manuscript from submission to publication. And what I want to know is, what's surprised you about the process, and what do you wish you'd known before you began it the first time? So what would you tell a new author to help prepare her for the process? So EJ, why don't you start us off?
I think what I would say to somebody doing this for the first time is be patient. When we did In Harm's Way, it was months. I was actually a little kind of surprised, but it makes sense now, knowing what I know now. It makes sense that it takes a while, but I was surprised. I mean, it was the better part of a year, and so patience is pretty key. Yeah,
that's great advice. And Gail, how about you?
Yeah, no, definitely patience. And I think for me too, editing is always hard, because you've got this story in your head, and when you look at it again, when it's being slightly changed, or you're trying to get through it, you don't see it the way other people see it. So that's always a little trying, but ultimately it all works. But yeah, patience, I would have to go back about that.
Yeah. And I think that one thing I've seen, and now that I'm on the other side, now that I'm a publisher too, as well as the writer, the curtain has been pulled back for me. And I think that as an author, I didn't understand quite what the process is, and why it takes so long, why authors need patience during this process, because you're doing several rounds of edits, and then the formatting, and then the proofreading, and there's so much you're reading these stories over and over and over again, and it's not as romantic as when you're writing it, is it? I mean,
not at all.
You get that story out there, and you're so proud and you're happy with it, and then your editors come around and they start ripping it to pieces and saying, well, you used just 253 times, can you take these out, please? And it's no longer as much fun during that process of getting it to the finish line when you're publishing it, and then you can get excited again afterwards.
So true.
Yeah. So patience is some great advice, really, for any author, not just new authors, but certainly anyone who doesn't really understand that process. They're not going to understand, why does it take so long? And okay, we're in the second round of edits. Why can't we release it next month? Well, there's still a lot to do between the editing and getting it released. So that's, I think that educating authors that way is really helpful. So spread the word. It takes a while to get these things published.
And it helps having wonderful publishers and editors, that's for sure.
That's right. And a good editor is worth their weight in gold. That's the truth.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about I wanted to do some lightning rounds with you. I don't know if you've done these before, but basically I'm just going to ask you some questions, and you're going to answer, the first thing that you think of. And so what I'll do is I'll say something, and I'll have EJ answer first, and then Gail. You guys game?
Sure, why not?
Yes. Okay, so we'll start out easy with stuff. Are you an early bird or a night owl?
Oh, I'm a night owl.
I'm an early bird.
Early bird. Okay. What's your favorite cartoon character?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
Okay. Gail, do you?
Bugs Bunny.
Bugs Bunny. EJ, you want to try chime in there? Pick one.
I always really like the Roadrunner.
Oh, okay, cool.
Mhm.
All right. Do you prefer a shower or a bath?
I love a bath.
I love a shower.
Okay. This is great. You two are like picking up. All right. Here's one you can't be opposed to each other on. What's your astrological sign?
Gemini.
Capricorn.
Capricorn. Okay. And do you prefer the beach or the mountains?
The beach.
Ooh. Torn, but probably the beach. Yes.
Yeah.
As long
That's
as it's not
interesting,
hot.
Gail, because you wrote about the mountains.
I know, but again, I spent 16 summers in the Poconos, and so
Yes.
while I love the mountains, nothing relaxes me more than sitting in that chair and just watching the waves.
Yeah, I understand entirely on that one.
Give me a good creek anytime.
Okay, which would you choose? Being able to speak every language in the world or being able to speak to animals?
Oh, speak to animals.
All right.
Animals.
Animals.
Yeah.
All right. I'm with you guys on that. Okay, and what's your favorite color?
Blue.
Blue.
Blue?
Mm-hmm.
Blue. All right, cool. All right. That's the end of our lightning round right now.
Cool.
I just wanna loosen you guys up a little bit. So let's talk about some more personal questions, but a little more into it. Let's talk about what are some of the themes or genres or tropes that you like to read, and why do you like to read them?
I like mysteries.
Okay.
I've from when I was little, and the little library bus used to come to our neighborhood. I always used to I got hooked on Encyclopedia Brown.
Mm-hmm.
That was my first foray into that, and so I like a good mystery because I can't write it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
So that means I guess you won't be writing any mysteries?
There won't be any mysteries in my future. No.
Okay. Totally fine.
Just
All right,
maybe a
EJ.
little mystery part in something, but no.
Sure. A little bit of suspense there.
Yeah.
How about you, EJ?
I read a lot of different genres. I love mysteries, obviously, because I'm writing them.
Right.
I also really like police procedurals and wish I could write them. I would love to be able to do that. I read some paranormal. I read some humor. I read nonfiction, science stuff. There's all kinds of things I really like to read. If it's printed in a book, I'm going to read it. It's basically what it comes down to.
Nice. I like that. Okay. And would you try and write in these other genres too, EJ, besides murder mysteries? And
I would love to. I really would like to write a police procedural. My character, Beth O'Brien, the homicide detective in these books, I really like that character. And there's another character that hasn't come in yet who will in the third book, who's also a police officer. And I would really like to be able to know more about police procedure and that kind of thing in order to write these kinds of books.
Yeah, obviously you have to do some research on that.
Yeah, exactly. And
we can only go so far with making stuff up, you know.
I know.
All right, now tell me, are you a plotter, a pantser, or a plantser? And if you don't know what these mean, a plotter is someone who does like the outline in the character studies. You know, they have the character book made out so that you know your characters well. You know exactly where you're going with each chapter. You know your overarching arcs and themes and stuff like that. And a pantser does it by the skin of their teeth. They just go sit down and they start writing and see where the characters take them, and they're often surprised. And then a plantser is kind of a combination of the two. You might do an outline, maybe it's a simple outline, and then you go back and change it later after you've done the writing because your characters went elsewhere. So let's see where you guys are at. EJ, what are you?
I would have told you before starting the third book, I would have told you that I was a pantser, but I've evolved a little bit into a plantser.
Oh.
So I have, and I'll put anything in an Excel spreadsheet. So I have notes, lists of scenes that I want or events that I want. Well, not scenes, actually. I don't even take it that far, but like events that I want or details that I just want to remember. So for instance, my protagonist, Annie, has had a fairly traumatic life over the last 2 or 3 years. And it's important to remember all of that. So I wrote down everything that's happened to her. But I don't do outlines of the story. And even though, for instance, for the third book, I know exactly what I want to do with it. That doesn't mean that, Annie or Patrick or one of the other characters isn't going to gallop off and do something else different. But I know where I want to take it, and I know how I want to get there. I just haven't written it down.
Probably a good idea for you to be writing some of the details down, since it's a series. You don't want to contradict something you said in one of the other books.
I actually had that happen already.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. And then I had to fix it, and I'm not sure it works, but okay, fine.
We'll see. But I think it will. And how about you, Gail?
I guess I'd have the same plans to too, because there are certain things, like when I wake up at 2:00 in the morning and I do remember what I want to put down, I will write something down and know that that's how I want it to happen. Or I've said to myself, gee, that'll be a good scene. And then I have to figure out how to get there.
Right.
So, yeah.
Cool. All right. So let me ask you both, what does your writing environment look like? Do you like to be in silence? Do you like to listen to certain music or have some sort of background noise when you're writing? Do you have go-to snacks or drinks when you're writing? Or do you have like a favorite chair? Or do you have to sit somewhere in particular? What is it that makes you happy when you're in your writing environment? EJ.
I'm actually sitting in my writing environment right now. I have a home office with a cat tree back here and a couple of cats. I have my Diet Coke. I have to have that. I have to have it quiet. I don't play music. Some people actually will write while I've got the TV on, and I think they're crazy. And Gail, if that's you, I apologize. I have to, or you either, Jody. I have to have it quiet, and with the cats hanging around with me, and I'm good.
Cool. And Gail, how about you?
My wife laughs at me all the time. She's like, "Can't you just go in there and write or something?" I'm like, "No, no." And believe it or not, I write at the end of the day in my office at work. After I've done reconciliations and things that make my head spin, everybody's gone, everything is quiet. I will sit there and just write and just write it. And then when I get a chance, go back and then fix the things. But I've found lately that there are certain songs that I'll hear, like when I'm driving in the car, that I then play while I'm writing. So I made a little list of those things, because when I was writing Flight to Paradise, I wanted to see if anybody else had written a book named Flight to Paradise. And I came across this song by Sarah Brightman called Fly to Paradise. And it was such a beautiful song that I played that as I wrote. So I have little songs. In fact, now I have some in my head that are going towards future books. But so my office environment to write is my actual work office. That's where I write.
Well, I can understand that, because you're already working and you're just like turning your attention towards something else, but being productive.
Right. And once everybody's gone and it's quiet, and it just works. Yeah,
it sounds like both of you like the quietness so that you can get into the story itself.
Yeah. And for me, it's always the late afternoon.
You're the night owl. You're the night owl, right? So
no. I'm the early bird.
You're the early bird. Okay.
But some of the ideas come at night. But no, that's when I just sit and try and put together.
There's just no accounting for when the inspiration is going to strike, is there? It's just whenever it is, it is.
You never know. You got to be prepared.
I like that people watch, because that really is inspiring at times. Definitely. So thank you for that. I think we have a few minutes left. So what I'd like to do is to hand that over to both of you so that you can tell us anything you want us to know about the project you read from today or about one of your other projects. So EJ, why don't you go first? Just tell us whatever you want us to know.
So Family Secrets, as we've talked about, will be out later on this year. And Annie's going to have an interesting time with many things, including discovering whether Nikki is really still alive and dealing with the police officers and a bunch of other stuff. There's a whole lot of other things that go on. I'm starting to write the third book. One of the things that I didn't mention is Annie was raised by her grandmother, Natalie, and her father. And now her dad is dead. And so she's very close to her grandma, Natalie. And they have a big falling out. About, I don't know, 2/3 of the way, 80% of the way through Family Secrets. Mm. And when Annie goes back to try to talk to her and find out what's going on, Grandma Natalie's not there. Mm-hmm. So the third book will be, Where's Grandma Natalie? And like I said earlier, I already know what I want to do with it. I already know what's going to happen. But this is going to be one of those plot lines that carries over from one to the next, where I have to do a little more filtering so people have the background. Mm. And I'm looking forward to writing this one. Actually, it's going to be different from the first two.
Well, that's always part of the greatness of series, is being able to spin off a bit in a different direction and do a different writing style even.
Well, and, In Harm's Way was about one step away from being a cozy. And Family Secrets is a little bit further removed yet. And the third book, which I'm currently calling Aftermath, is going to be significantly darker. So the tone of them and the atmosphere is changing. And that's not planned. It's just how it's evolving.
Mm-hmm. Well, I look forward to reading it. As your publisher, I can say that.
You can, yes.
Okay, Gail, tell us what you want us to know about what you just read for us or one of your other projects.
Well, again, this is the third. Before my first one that my wonderful publisher, Lee, got published for me was Sunlight in the Shadows, and then came Flight to Paradise. Now Summer of Collins. I have two more in my head. One that has been there, and I've actually probably at least have 5 chapters into that one. That one sits there because for some reason this one is I don't know, it's going to be a little harder to write because it's going to be a little more emotional for me. Then there's another one that just popped up into my head, and there's like 3 or 4 chapters into that one. And so now they're fighting in my brain about who's actually going to get more written. And people have said to me, well, can't you write them both at the same time? I'm like, no, I have to concentrate on one. So right now, after a break now with the Summer of Collins, I have to see who yells louder in my head to be written. Or maybe somebody else will pop in. I don't know. You never know.
Right. I do know some authors who are able to write more than one book at a time, but I just can't do it. That's not my style either. So I understand that entirely.
I like to give my characters my full attention.
Right, exactly. Otherwise, they'll keep shouting at you.
Well, yeah. There's a lot of going on in the head there.
Well, I'm sorry to say we've run out of time today. I'd like to thank EJ and Gail for joining us today, spending some time with us, letting us get to know you. And so thank you both. And I wanted to let everyone know who's watching that this session was brought to you by Desert Palm Press and Launch Point Press. Yay. We are sister presses and have collaborated to offer these live streams to you on a monthly basis. We hope you'll join us for our next session on Thursday, July 20th, when we'll hear readings from several talented authors and discuss the GCLS conference they attended a few weeks before. I actually will be attending, so I hope I'll see some people there. Until then, I hope you'll visit desertpalmpress.com website and my website, launchpointpress.com. Until I see you next, have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Jody.
Bye.
Bye.